welcome to our channel Journeying Hearts, where we talk about every place in the world that you can travel to. And today we'll talk about Singapore. Now we'll talk about everything related to Singapore. When is the best time to visit, how you can get a visa, what are the best places to stay in Singapore, how much cash you should carry, and a lot more. So let's get started. Singapore was a part of British Empire till 1963, and it became the Republic of Singapore in 1965. And since then, they have created so many skyscrapers, created a whole island. They opened so many tourist attractions, and they banned chewing gum. Yeah, they did. There are so many great things about Singapore. The public transportation is amazing. Tourism industry is great. You have a lot of tourist attractions. The weather is good all year long. And also, it's probably the greenest city in the world. I have not been to any other city which is this green. So, are you excited? Let's get into it. The best thing about Singapore is that it's sunny throughout the year. It does not have seasons like we do because it's close to the equator and it's an island. So any time of the year you can decide to visit Singapore and have a great time. Now there are certain months which receive slightly more rainfall like November and December. If you don't like rain, you can avoid that. But anytime you want to visit Singapore, you can do it. Keeping the weather aside, there is one more important factor that you should consider: the events that happen in Singapore. Now, the reason I want you to think about events when planning the trip is that you can either plan to experience a festive side of Singapore, or you can decide for a quieter holiday and plan to avoid the crowds. So, let's talk about the main events that happen throughout the year. January to March is the time where they have Chinese New Year and they have a celebration for Holi. April to July is the time where there are a lot of food festivals and shopping festivals. So if you enjoy shopping or food, you must visit in April to July. August to October, it's going to be better if you consider the weather because it's going to be a little bit cooler. Also in September, the Formula One Grand Prix happens in Singapore every year. So if you are a fan of that, you must plan in September. November and December see the most celebrations in Singapore. The whole city is lit up due to Diwali and then Christmas and New Year's, right? So it's a great time to be in Singapore. But also consider that in November it rains a little bit more. So you can expect rainfall every day in Singapore. But in the end, I'll say visit any time of the year. Singapore is great all year long. Now let's talk about visa and documentation. So for Indians, you're required to apply for a visa in advance, but based on the passport that you have, you may be able to enter Singapore without a visa. For Indians, it's going to be an e-visa that you apply in advance and you receive it over the email. Also, before you arrive in Singapore, you're going to have to fill out the SG arrival card online. So this is going to help you with your immigration process at the airport. It's a mandatory step, so remember to fill it out before you fly out. Now, there are two ways that you can apply for visa to Singapore. The first one is to apply through an authorized agent. You can find a full list of these authorized agents on the website for Ministry of External Affairs of Singapore. I'll put a link in the description so you can check it out. The second option only applies if you have a person who you know in Singapore. So any resident or a citizen in Singapore can apply for a visa on your behalf. A lot of people do not know anyone in Singapore, so the first one is the obvious choice. For us also, it was the case, and we had to apply through an authorized agent. Now the visa fees is only 30 Singapore dollars, but you have to pay an additional 500 rupees to the authorized agent who will apply your visa on your behalf. This rate is fixed and it is mentioned on the website for Ministry of External Affairs of Singapore, right? So in case someone asks more money, just point them to this website or try another agent. Singapore has one of the best airports in the world. The Changi airport is so well connected that you can find a flight from any place in the globe. Specifically talking about India, you'll have so many flights from Delhi, Mumbai. It's a 5.5 hours flight. Now, if you're looking for cheap flights, I would suggest just compare the prices on Google and Skyscanner. There are so many airlines that operate to Singapore, and you should be able to find a pretty good deal on these websites. I would recommend to always check for the prices on these sites and then go to the airline website and book directly with them. Customer care services are pretty good when you book directly with the airlines. So flights ho gayi, visa ho gaya. Now let's talk about where you should stay in Singapore. Now there are so many great areas to stay in Singapore, but I'm going to list out a few areas that we liked and we'd say these are probably the best areas if you are visiting Singapore. The first one is Marina Bay. This is the central location and it's very close to all major attractions in Singapore. So if you want to spend most of your time visiting these tourist attractions, then you should stay in Marina Bay. It's also going to be a little bit costlier as this is the most popular area in the town. The second one is the Keys. Yeah, not quite. Keys. Keys. Say it with me. Keys. Now, Robertson Quay is pretty laid back. You'll find a lot of locals cycling or jogging around. You'll not see a lot of tourists there. There's an amazing Indian restaurant also there. I'll tell you about it later when we talk about food. The Clarke Quay is the life of the town. It's an amazing place with so many restaurants and bars along the riverside. So if you enjoy parties or music, it's the place to be. The next one is Orchard Road. Another great choice if you enjoy shopping and nightlife. There are so many restaurants, luxury brands, and amazing hotels in this neighborhood. Also, do consider that it's a little far from most tourist attractions. So if you are traveling with elder people, it may not be the best choice as you have to move around a lot. The fourth option is Sentosa Island. So during your trip, you may want to spend one night in Sentosa, but anything more than that is probably not required unless you have kids who want to stay in Sentosa Island for all the rides and fun. Now, if you're traveling with kids, I would definitely recommend that you stay at least a couple of nights in Sentosa Island. We stayed at the Ritz at Marina Bay, and we got this room with the most stunning view in Singapore. With Marina Bay on one side and the Singapore Flyer on the other, this room was just out of a fairy tale. Now, another travel tip, if you're traveling for a special occasion like a birthday or anniversary, remember to always inform your hotel about it. If they know about it, they'll probably make some efforts to make it special for you and they'll probably give you a room upgrade if nothing else. Now, there's one more place in Singapore which is going to save you a lot of money and it's another great option if you're traveling on budget. But we are going to keep it a secret for now because there is some information that I want to share with you before we talk about this option. So keep watching the video to find about this secret. How to get around the city. Now, Singapore has an amazing public transport system. And it's also a country with very expensive taxis. So here are the 4 options which will help you get around Singapore. The first one is the MRT. This is probably the most popular and most budget-friendly option. And this is why I love the MRT in Singapore. You can use your credit or debit card to enter and exit the stations. You don't need to buy another card. Although they do charge a small fee on public buses. So these are going to be slightly cheaper than MRT, but they take a little longer as they have a lot more stops on the way. You can also pay here with your credit or debit card, or you can get the MRT pass, which also works on the buses. The third option is taxis, which are going to be pretty expensive, to be honest. We only use taxis once on our trip to travel from our hotel to the airport, and it cost us around 30 Singapore dollars. Apart from that, I don't think you'll need to use a taxi because the buses and the public transport is pretty good. In case you need to book a cab, I would suggest you download Grab. We use that to book our taxi to the airport. The fourth option is our favorite, just walk. Now, we always love to explore new cities on foot. Walking is the best way to get the feel of the city, right? So if you are young and you want to view the city from a different lens, we always suggest you walk as much as you can. Now, it may not be possible for everyone. If you are traveling with children or elderly, you may still have to book taxis or take MRTs. But if you can, just walk all the way. We walked around 15 to 20 kilometers every day in Singapore on an average. And it's the cheapest option. So if you don't mind a little bit of sweat, just walk. Now we are going to talk about this secret. Remember, I said that there is another option which is going to save you a lot of money. Well, the option is to stay anywhere in Singapore with an MRT station. If you are low on cash, Find any place which is the cheapest and has an MRT station close to it, and you'll be fine. You'll have an amazing time in Singapore. And honestly, we have used public transport in a lot of European cities, and I would just say that MRT in Singapore is probably better than most cities in Europe. How much cash to carry? अब बहुत लोग बोलते हैं that you should carry Singapore dollars, you should convert your Indian currency to Singapore dollars and take it with you. You should always have cash on you. Honestly, our whole trip was cashless. We did not convert any money into Singapore dollars. We just carried 2 credit cards and 1 forex card. We did not even touch one physical note during our whole trip. Can you believe that? It's fully cashless. Now, I would say 99% of places in Singapore accept credit and forex cards, so you don't need cash there. However, there are some places like Bugis Street where they charge a 3% extra amount if you want to pay with a card. I think this is to cover the transaction fees that the owners have to pay Amex or Visa. That is why they charge an extra 3%. But otherwise, every place accepts card. Now, a lot of people ask how many days you should stay in Singapore. Honestly, I think anywhere between 4 to 7 days is going to be sufficient for Singapore, but anything less than 4 days is not going to be the ideal choice because there is so much to see and do in Singapore that you at least need 4 days to have a good trip. So, our trip was 5 days, and we think that it's the right amount of time that you'd want to spend in Singapore. You'll need at least 1 day for Sentosa Island, and if you want to visit Universal Studios also, then probably 2 days is what it's going to take. We had already been to Universal Studios in Los Angeles, so we did not want to waste our time there as most of the rides are the same as LA, but still you'll need 1 day to explore the rest of the island. You'll also need at least 2 days to see all attractions at Marina Bay. Then you have Chinatown, Little India, Orchard Road, the Art Science Museum, Vivo City, Fort Canning Park, Mount Faber, and a lot more. So honestly, you must plan for at least 4 days. Our recommendations for food. Singapore has an extremely diverse culture, so you'll find food and drinks from all around the world here. Now, we had some amazing food at different restaurants and hawker centers in the city, but we just love these two places. The first one is Dabba Wala, which is an Indian restaurant at the Quay. If you love Indian food, you must visit this place. It's not too crowded and it's along the riverside, so you're going to enjoy the ambience. There are also a lot of other cafes and restaurants there. Now, the second one is the Paolo Gastronomia. This is another cafe at the bayfront right next to the Art Science Museum, and we love their cold coffee and the panini. You must try it. If you're staying or visiting Orchard Road, we'll also recommend to visit Bacha Coffee. This brand is from Morocco, but they have several stores in Singapore and they serve so many different blends of coffee. So we tried Bacha 1910, which is one of their signature flavored coffees, and it was amazing. And they have such buttery croissants that you cannot miss. I honestly can't recall any other place than Paris that serves such amazing croissants. And we are done. So if you have any other questions or comments about your trip to Singapore, feel free to write in the comment section. If you like that video, please hit the subscribe button as it will help us keep making such useful content for you. Thanks a lot for watching and we hope you liked the video. Now, if you want to know about the top 10 attractions in Singapore, remember to check out our video about that and you'll see a link somewhere on the screen.